Hello and welcome to this week's video on pet portraiture. Unusually, I'm going to be starting midway through a painting rather than at the beginning. The reason for this is I'm going to be working much more carefully and I'm not aiming to finish this painting by the end of the video. As you can see before you, it's of two Irish Terriers. This is a painting that I'm doing as a commission, and I'm going to talk about how I started it, what the thinking is behind it, how I'm going to paint fur, how I'm going to mix the colours, and I'm just going to show you on this dog here how I will work towards a more completed state. I'm also going to be working on this dog, and as we go on I'll probably be doing at the end a speed painting to show you how it develops over a period of a couple of days this weekend. So that's what's going to be happening today. First of all, I'm going to show you the roughs that I drew out, and the first rough is here. This is the rough that I gave to the gentleman who owns the dogs. I gave him lots of different roughs of all different compositions. This is the one that he really liked. So this is the one that I'm going with. You can see I graphed it up for drawing out purposes. And the next stage was drawing it out on the page, or rather on the canvas, which is here. And so what I did when I first started to paint it, I worked on the background first, which you can see here. And then I progressed to starting to work on the dogs. I've just been basically blocking in shapes of colour, and I did like to put the noses in to give them a bit of form, just to show the gentleman that how it will look in the end, give him a vague idea. I was not too sure about the colouring of it because most of the photos that I had were a bit bleached, and I know Irish Terriers can range from very pale beige colour right the way through to a dark rusty brown, so I had to ask him first, and he said they're quite rusty coloured, so I think I've got them a little bit pale, so that's what I'm going to be concentrating on today, is to get them to the right colour. So to begin, I'm going to talk through my palette. This is the palette from the other day. I've had to scrape some paint off because it dried, so it's probably not very clear. I'll just wipe that. So I've got, this is a vermilion red, titanium white, cadmium yellow deep, yellow ochre. This is a little mix I did of, actually I had Naples yellow in that, which is a kind of a chalky pale yellow. Don't often use that. Cadmium red deep, ultramarine blue, that's olive green deep, this is sap green, and I think that is permanent green. So I've got quite a few greens going on there. And I think all these colours probably is all I need to mix all the different tones that I can see in the fur. I'm using either Aqua Duo, which is one of my favourites. They're very, very thick. And Lucas Berlin, which I also like. They're pretty thick and they're quite high in pigment, and they're from Lawrence's Art Shop. You can't really get those anywhere else much. And this little one is Winsor & Newton Artisan. They're a little bit slippery and the pigment's lower, but if you can't get anything else, they're doable. I'm just a paint snob. So anyway, that's the colours I'm using. So to begin with, I'm going to start mixing my fur colour, and I'm going to start with the darkest rusty brown. So I'm going to take the olive green, and at this stage, these are water-based oils, of course, I'm going to mix using water. The reason being is, even with water-based oils, you work fat on thin. So a little bit of cadmium red deep, and that's a very dark brown. The gentleman who I'm doing the portrait for sent me an image of a painting that he really likes of an Irish Terrier to give me an idea of the colour. So if you're doing a painting for somebody or a relative, it's always a good idea to ask detailed questions about things like colouring, and how they look if they've got short hair or long hair, because Irish setters look very different when their hair grows. So I'm going to work on to my next colour, which is going to be a paler rusty red. I always mix my own browns, but like to use pre-mixed greens. So I'm going to put a little bit of this cadmium yellow deep into here, and this will make quite a nice rusty red. Add some more water. And a bit more red, I think, and a bit more yellow. A lot more yellow. So that's probably my next darkest colour. And the joy of water-based oils is that you can just mix them and they will last. So this will last till tomorrow. I usually spray water over them to keep them a bit wet, or put cling film on, but they do last quite well. So the next colour is going to be a paler brown. So I'm going to use my sap green instead, because I'm not going to get a paler brown, red brown with the olive green. So here we go, that's my sap green. Quite a bit of water. That's an aqua duo colour, and you do have to use a lot of water with it because it is very, very stiff. And the red again, and the cad yellow deep again. I think I've put too much green in that. So I'll have to get some more yellow out. I'll put a little bit of Naples yellow because there are some paler areas. So you can see with Naples yellow, it's a very creamy yellow. Here's my yellow. And this is a Berlin colour by Lucas. So take a big chunk of that, I think. And I don't mind mixing a lot, because I can use this colour to and change it with mixes from other colours. So we are getting paler. I'm going to take some yellow ochre this time because it's less acidic, and put in a little bit of red. When I spoke to the gentleman about what I was going to be doing with his dogs, and the dogs, by the way, this is Archie and this is Yasmin, I thought autumn colours would be nice just because it's the season and he does a lot of walking in the mountains with them. So I just thought it would be nice to have that autumn feel to the painting. So with this, I think a bit more white. Aqua Duo paints are so stiff, you do have to add an awful lot. So the white is Aqua Duo, and so is the yellow ochre, and you can see I'm adding water, a lot of it. And again, as I said, I'm not adding linseed oil yet because this is still going to be at the underpainting stage, and when I start to paint over this, then I will start adding the linseed oil to give it a little bit more of movement in the paint, and also a nice shine to it. Yeah, I'm adding an awful lot of water. So although Aqua Duo are very, very expensive paints, you're talking about a tube of titanium white, which is probably one of the cheaper ones. That would probably set you back about £11–12 now, and you actually don't get as much. You get 50 millilitres, I think, compared with more in other paints. So I think pretty much happy with that. I'll probably add to these colours and change them slightly. So I'm going to take a hog brush. So when I'm doing pets, I usually like to use a damaged brush, a hog brush. Very often I do have another brush, which is a Pro Art one, which is an old one, and I snipped into the end with a pair of scissors like that to make it random marks. This is a graduate brush, I think. Let me check. Yeah, I think this is a graduate brush, and this one started out life only actually a week ago as a filbert, and you can see what's happened to it. So I wouldn't really recommend the bristle brushes with graduate, not like the soft brushes. They don't hold their shape and they don't really perform, but it's great for fur because you get all these lovely little lines and marks with it, with all the little bristles at the end. So for pets, especially long-haired pets, you want a nice damaged bristle brush. So I'm looking at my photograph and I'm going to change the colour around the eyes. I'm going to change the colour over the whole thing actually. So I first of all start to layer, and I don't look at the highlights, I'm looking at the dark areas. So I'm going to block in. Do you know what? I think that needs a bit more red. I'm doing a lot of guessing with this painting, so I'm hoping it's going to work out. Dark in there, and there's dark in there. And I need to have my paint a little bit more runny. He looks a bit angry at the moment, and he's not. He's apparently, he's a bit of a daft dog. Okay, so I'm just looking at the darker areas, and inside the mouth here it's a lot darker. So I'm going to take my red and just put in there. And these are quite thin because I've already started painting the shapes as I saw them, so I don't really want to lose that. So I'm just almost glazing on top with just water and the paint. So if I squint, I can see a dark area there. So this is just blocking in and getting the feel of the face. There's a little bit of a darker area here. So I'm getting a little bit more of a rust colour, and I think this colour is quite good actually. And in the ears are darker. Now I had to adjust the ears because in the photographs they were all sort of pointing sideways, and Irish Terriers naturally have ears that point forward, which makes them look quite comical. So I adjusted the ears. I found on the internet an Irish Terrier with ears pointing forward, and also one of the photographs that the owner sent me had one ear pointing forward. So I've actually had to just improvise a little bit and make it up a little bit. So I'm going to put some of that colouring in there. So he's starting to form a little bit down here. He's getting a little bit more rusty red, which I'm pleased about. I'm going to go into probably this and a little bit of my pale colour. Maybe a bit of white. This is where I start mixing a little bit. And over here, I'm going to fill in that area there. That's too light. And just pull a little bit of colour across there. Now I've got too much paint on, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that off. So because I've only just started this today, it's very much a warming up thing. So I'm always a bit rusty when I first start painting and not sure of what I'm doing. And it's only after a little while of painting that I start to feel comfortable with it and get the hang of it. I've got too much white on my brush, I think, so I'm going to saturate it with the dark colour over here, and that takes the white out. I find with water-based oils that they don't exactly clean in the water pot. You do have to use, to get them really clean, you do have to use white spirit. and because I don't like the smell, I don't tend to wash my brushes too well. So down here I think we need a little bit more. That's it. So I'm making little marks and movements that go with the fur. So down here I'm going to put in a bit more colour, and looking at the shadows, there's a shadow in there, and I'm getting that rough feel of fur just with my brush. Going down to here, there's a little shadow down there, and actually I'm using 2 photographs for this dog as well, so I've chopped the head off there on one photograph, oh, and the ears from another photograph, and the body down here from yet another photograph. So I know that the body is very dark down here. Now I don't want the eye to go down here too much, so I'm not going to make it as dark as it is in the photograph, but what I might do is have a little line running up so that it takes the eye up. The main shadows are not shadows, the main dark areas are going to be the noses, the mouths, the eyes particularly, and the ears, and that will bring the dogs forward. The reason I chose green for the background is because of the autumn colour, but also a lot of the photographs, the dogs were in countryside and with paths that were looked a bit chalky, so I thought it might be quite nice to have that colouring behind them. So I'm looking at the muzzle over here a little bit more in the face, going down like that, and I'm slowly starting to fill it in. I've still got the green showing through. I'm going to go a little bit lighter with this nice colour over here on the muzzle, so add more water, and this brush is a very thick brush, so I'm not going to get my details using this particularly. So going over the nose here, it's pale, that's better. And I'll take some of this colour because it slightly changes. I don't want the whole dog to be just 2 colours. So it goes slightly dirtier around here. I think it needs to be a bit darker. So he's got a darker area here. That's it. And I've gone over the nose a little bit, but I'll be painting that in again anyway. Quite dark just above the nose here. And on the head, it's so pale you can barely see anything. So I'm just going to put in a darker area that I can see. And then on top of that, I'll go lighter. Just putting it in like that. It is difficult doing portraits from photographs that have been taken outdoor, likewise with flashes as well. Just going to fill that in. I want to get rid of a lot of this green. Yep, and going down here, it's quite a bit paler over here, and that will bring Yasmin forward. So I'm just going to put that in. Maybe going with a little bit of Naples yellow. And then put in a few of the markings that I can see. It's quite pale because of it being outside. So maybe at some point I'll have a look through and find one of the dog inside to get a little bit more of the depth of colour. So I need to work this area a bit. I'm going to move away from my big brush shortly. My problem is that in the photo here, Yasmin has her head down here. So this is all supposition. So I'm going to have to use another photo I've got of Archie to see where to go with it. So on to Yasmin, and I've got my images of her up now, and I'm going to work a little bit darker into her hair as well. So a little bit darker into here and more rusty coloured. In fact, I might just glaze over a little bit to get the colouring. So she's also got darker areas down here, and it's quite dark there on the neck, so I'm going to go into my dark rusty colour to block that in. I'm just blocking in shapes. It's always about looking for shapes of colour. So I don't look for, obviously with fur you've got a lot of tonal values going on. You've got lighter fur on top of darker areas, so I always block in dark. So I block in the darker areas that I can see underneath the fur, and then put the pale fur on top. And within the neck it goes to there, so but it's a bit paler, and also within this area you've got a bit more pale. That's better colour. I think I need to add a bit more red actually to my colours. So taking the fur, it goes down there like that, and she's got a bit of a triangle going on down there. So within the face you've got a darker area here, and there's quite a bit of dark down there. I'm going to go even darker there because I'll go over it with paler colour. And behind, she's got a lot of wispy long hair around her muzzle, but I'm going to go quite dark in there and then paint that over and over the top there. It's quite dark, and within here, but then I've already got that. She's got long straggly bits that go down here, but I'm going to put those on last because that's just detail. She has a darker area down under here as well. I might go a bit darker for that as well. And looking at her face, obviously this area is dark, and I'm going to go reasonably rusty dark with her ears, putting in a dark area that I've seen there. And I think probably something a bit paler over here. That's not red enough. Let's redden her up a little bit. That's better. A bit more pink. Don't know if I'll keep that pink. So I like that because I like the dark against the light. I think it really comes forward. I have exaggerated her ear and lifted it up a little bit, and I think that gives a tilt to the head. So always adjusting as you go and thinking about what you're doing and thinking about the character of the dog. Yasmin is a more thoughtful dog, I think, I sense from the photographs I've got. And in her head there, so a little bit of a darker colour going on, a bit of a red colour. So yeah, I'm happy with the colouring. So basically what I'm doing here is trying to get the colour rather than the fur. So going on to the body, she's got a shadow that runs down here, and that goes to a shape here actually, which is quite nice, and it goes darker at the bottom of this shape. And I'm going to add a bit more water to my paint because it's a little bit too stiff. So over on this side, I'm just going to fill in now. It's very light, so I'm not going to go too dark underneath. But I'm going to add a bit more red to my colour, and just that's way too dark. So I've added a little bit of red to this mix here. Made it probably a bit too watery, but I'll put that on anyway. And I can see areas of this rusty colour, so going down here, and also underneath her collar. They've both got nice discs on their collars, and with this photograph the disc wasn't visible, but I've added it on with the collar from another photograph. And it's very pale on this side, going down there like that. I'm going to try and get some form of body. So there's a shadow down this area, and then also shadow down this body area is in shadow as well. So what happens down here is she gets these nice long straggly bits of fur, so I'm just going to fill that in. I could even leave a bit of green. I'll see coming through. So that's very soft focus at the moment. So I'm going to go back to now work on the faces, and I'll leave the body. I'm using Lucas oil colour, linseed oil, and for those who didn't see my earlier, oops, sorry, dropped it a bit low. For those who didn't see my earlier video, this is specifically for water-based oils. If you use ordinary linseed oil, then they'll turn into ordinary oil paints, and adding linseed oil always makes them dry a bit more slowly. Put the lid back on. I'm a devil for forgetting to put lids on. Right. So what I do now is the way I work is I take a little bit of linseed oil, and I'll mix it with the paint, and it just flows better. Now there is water in this paint as well, so I'm adding a little bit of fat to it, but it's not the fattest it's going to get. So I'm looking at over the eyes. I'll just adjust my picture on my, yeah. So over the eyes, it's a little bit paler here. So basically, I just at the moment work on my highlights and shadows, following the line of the fur, but not actually painting fur, using my rough brushes. A little bit more light on here. And looking at my photograph, I can see that a lot of the head actually is very pale, but I'm not going to do that because I think that indoors he'd have a little bit more colour. And over the eyes, I've got here my rigger, so I'm putting it in my mix. This is where he has some very long hairs. Need a bit more paint. Just all drop down. Oh no, green. Right, I'm going to mix white, ochre. No, I don't want red. Cadmium yellow. Well, actually I do want red. I don't want to turn it pink though, so I've got to be very careful of that. So I'm going to take linseed oil, bit of water. I might add a little bit more yellow into it, just to give it a little bit more warmth, and a bit more white. So let's see what we have. See what we get. Normally I wouldn't be doing this. This is for the video purposes. I would wait until the end. It's still too thick. I would wait till the end to do all my details. So that's a lot more runny. So I will just see how that looks. That's it. So you do need to think about all your areas of colour and your lights and darks before you think about the fur, really. And what I tend to do is just add a few hints of fur, like for instance over the eye here, like that, and that's looking a bit more shaggy. I'm going a little bit paler just on the nose. So now I'm starting to feel like I'm warming up a little bit. I'm getting the feel of it. And going down here, it's quite pale, but I'm going to take some of this reddish colour and put that in. I'm looking at two photographs to do the muzzle because one of them is blurred and the other one is a bit more, has a bit more definition, so I can see that the fur goes round a little bit and I haven't quite got that. So going to the other side again, you go a bit darker than what I've got, and now you can see I'm adding a lot more linseed oil, but the paint already has water in it. A little bit more water. I don't want to go full on with the linseed just yet. So going into this side, he has got quite a dark patch here. Going down there, and under his nose it is very dark actually, around the mouth. We'll put a little bit more depth of colour in here. And also work around the mouth a little bit more. So I'll use some of this colour that I haven't touched yet because it's got slightly more red. It's dark, but it's a bit more reddish. So a bit of linseed oil and a little bit of water. So there's a lot of hair around here that I'm not putting in yet because I'm still working on the feel of it. Also around his eye, there's a very dark area. So where I made a black, I'm going to add more water and some linseed oil. I'm going to put in a line that I can see on one of the photographs. That's good. Oops, wrong colour. And also along here. So you can see the whites of the eyes, and the problem is my photographs are so small it's hard to tell if it's an area of skin that's shining or the whites of the eyes, but I think it works well as whites, so I'm just going to keep those. So with the eye, I'm going to paint an eye. So his eyes are actually brown. I'm going to go with the brown, and I'm going to add a little bit of white into it. I'm not keen on that brown actually, I'm going to put some red in. And I'm going to, that's not quite chestnutty enough, a bit more linseed, and see brown just around here and there. So that's giving him a little bit more life in his eyes, and I can see shadows in his eyes of it looks like a bill. Oh, it's a head. It's the owner's head I can see in his eyes reflected. That's rather nice. So I'm putting in the owner's head there, and there's a few strange dark shapes in this one, but there is quite a light area, so I'm going to take the white, put it next to the purple and take a little bit of purple, so very subtle. I'm going to go for pure white because that will come in a little shine at the end. And there's quite a lot of light going on in this eye, so it goes up here, down there, And for this eye, there's a big shape there and another little one next to it. I think I've overdone that. It's a bit too big. Also, it's a bit loud, so I'll take it down a bit. And around that, it's an awful lot darker. So I'll go back into my black colour here and just put in the shapes I can see. Like that. So basically with eyes, you're looking at your mid-tone, your dark tone and your light tone, and also all the little shapes you can see. And at the bottom of the eye, I can see a little bit of purple. There is a lot of purple in these, but then I think that might be just the camera rather than the dog's eyes. You don't want to spend too much time fiddling around, which I'm starting to do, because spontaneity works really well with animals' eyes. You can end up getting them a little bit dead. So I'm going to take a dark colour, just put in these shadow lines that I can see. Should be a bit darker than that. And on the other side again there is a shadow line. Take those down a bit. That's a bit better. I've decided to use this, which is a Pro Art one, and this is the one that I snipped with scissors. So you get quite nice lines with it, random lines. So to move on, I'm going to start to put my fur in. So it is quite dark just above the eye here, so I'm going to take my darker paint, and again I want it reasonably runny. Oops, too much water. Mix it in and just put in, using the corner, some darker areas around there, and also he's darker just above there, like that. And we have, if I look at his head, it's tricky to see, but we do have a little bit of shadow within there. So I'm always dragging my brush in the way the hairs are growing on the animal. So it's still a little bit dark. I'm going to add a bit of blue because it's a cooler dark around the eye, just here and here, and into the ear it goes very dark just here. So I'm going to take this colour and put that in. That's good. I think it needs to go darker, so I'm going to mix a black. I'm going to mix olive green and cadmium red deep. I'm going to have to put some more out. In there. And a little bit of ultramarine, and I get quite a nice deep colour. So into that ear and also into this a little bit more, and that will bring it out much more. So going back to the fur, I think he has a bit of a shadow that runs along the middle. Like that. And then with his muzzle, the hair kind of curves round, and he's got a few little areas, little tufts there. So I'm going to put in a shadow that I can see on the inner eye, just there, and also on the other side there, so that when I put my paler area on, I can just flick into that and I'll get the little pale hairs So first of all though, I'm going to go a little bit darker over the top of the muzzle. So he's gone really dark now. And also on and around the eye. Now looking very carefully, there's quite a bit of dark under the eye. So I'm going to go into put a bit more blue into my black, because it is quite a bluish colour under the eye there. And just pop that in. We'll neaten this up later on when I do details. And also on this side he's got a little bit of that, not quite so much. And then he has a dark area that goes just around here, like that. And some of them darker areas go down here as well. So I'm just going to put that as a shape and then go over with pale. So I'm slowly filling him in. Goes a little bit. Oh, over here, what's interesting is he's got hair that goes up over the ear. So I'm just going to put some darker colour in there so that when I put the lighter hair in, you'll be able to see it more. So I feel like he's becoming a little bit more solid now, and he wasn't before. He's got nice fur that goes over the tops of the eyes as well. At the top of his head, I think it's quite pale. So I'm going to take this very pale colour that I mixed. So I mixed this while I didn't have the camera running. But basically it's Naples yellow with cadmium yellow deep and a little bit of yellow ochre and white. And I'm just going to put in the top of his head a little bit. And looking at the shape of it, it goes up in the middle and then down again. And taking this colour, which actually seems to work, I can then put on hairs that go, follow the direction over there, like that. So this is still quite dark, I'm still building. I will go lighter with this, but I'm just feeling my way at the moment. With his muzzle, the light hits it right in the middle here, but I think there are hairs that go down like that. Bit more pale, and that goes quite low over his nose. Yeah, like that. If you like, I feel I'm still not getting that rusty colour. What I might do is do a bit of glazing over the end with over the painting at the end with a bit of red, and I think that might help it. He's got little bits of fur that go up there like that. And looking carefully, some of that paler colour goes into this area here. Oops. I'm looking at where his ears are. He's got a few little tufts that cover that area there. And probably what I'll do is maybe use a rigger to do more lighter areas just over the sky, over the eye with pale colour. So going over this side, he also has pale areas that go down there like that. Happy with that so far. And also under the eye, he has a pale area that goes here and under the eye like that, and around here. So I think I've done this darker area a little bit too big, so I'm just going to paint over it. So I'm just adjusting as I go with careful observation. His fur's a little bit too perfect up there, so when I get the rigger I'm going to rough it up a little bit. But it's shorter down the side of the head, so I'm going to put a little bit of that in there. And this breaks up down the side of the head, this area here. that. So they have quite short fur down the side of the heads compared with their muzzles. Now I have a problem here in that the background is the same tonal value as the side of the head. So what I was thinking of doing as I go is darken the background, because also on his ears he has lighter areas and then they will stand out. So for instance, he has light going over here. And also on this ear it's a little bit lighter as well, and that will bring it forward. So going over to this side of the face, I think that was a little bit too strong, that dark colour. So I'm going to go over it with a red, because I can see in my photograph that it is a little bit red. Right, made that too big, so I will use my paler colour to go over it again. I have to say it's drying quite quickly, and this is water-based oils because it's not cold today. Take a line down there. So with your paint you need it to be reasonably runny for it to flow. And I'll take some line of pale down there. Right, so I'm happy with that so far. The chin I'm not happy with. I need to darken that down a little bit, I think. But behind that it is quite pale. So he's only got a short chin. So a little bit of white into that Naples yellow colour here. Take a little bit of this and go in here. I've already gone quite pale around the neck, and then just maybe a little bit here. So I'm just moving around where I really feel like it at the moment, feeling my way, following the line of the fur. And you can put your light tone on, and then you can go in with your darker tone over it to get the feeling of the fur. So I'm flicking, it's not quite dark enough. There's a lot of pale on my brush. That's it. So you don't want your fur going all the same way on an Irish Terrier. That it's a little bit random. You do get waves in the way the fur grows, and you want to capture that. So you can see I'm not paying attention to hair at all really. I'm just looking at shapes, and using a bristle brush you'll get the feeling of fur anyway, and it's only towards the end that you start to put a few stronger bits of fur in, maybe using a rigger, something like that. I might put a bit of yellow into this colouring here because it's a little bit too pink. Going a bit paler down this side. A little bit paler over here. Don't want to go too pale like in the photograph though, otherwise I'll lose the colouring again. So I'm going to start to work with a smaller brush now. and this is where I start to put a little bit more detail in. So I might start at this point adding a bit of linseed oil, so I'll have to get it out. So what I do now is the way I work is I take a little bit of linseed oil and I'll mix it with the paint, and it just flows better. Now there is water in this paint as well, so I'm adding a little bit of fat to it, but it's not the fattest it's going to get. So I'm looking at over the eyes. I'll just adjust my picture on my, yeah. So over the eyes, it's a little bit paler here. So basically I just at the moment work on my highlights and shadows following the line of the fur, but not actually painting fur, using my rough brushes. A little bit more light on here, and looking at my photograph I can see that a lot of the head actually is very pale, but I'm not going to do that because I think that indoors he'd have a little bit more colour. And over the eyes I've got here my rigger, so I'm putting it in my mix. This is where he has some very long hairs. I need a bit more paint. It's all dropped down. Oh no, green. Right, I'm going to mix white, ochre. No, I don't want red. Cadmium yellow. Well, actually I do want red. I don't want to turn it pink though, so I've got to be very careful of that. So I'm going to take linseed oil, bit of water. Might add a little bit more yellow into it, just to give it a little bit more warmth, and a bit more white. So let's see what we have. Let's see what we get. Normally I wouldn't be doing this. This is for the video purposes. I would wait until the end. It's still too thick. I would wait till the end to do all my details. So that's a lot more runny. So I will just see how that looks. That's it. So you do need to think about all your areas of colour and your lights and darks before you think about the fur, really. And what I tend to do is just add a few hints of fur, like for instance over the eye here, like that, and that's looking a bit more shaggy and going a little bit paler just on the nose. So now I'm starting to feel like I'm warming up a little bit and getting the feel of it. And going down here, it's quite pale, but I'm going to take some of this reddish colour and put that in. I'm looking at two photographs to do the muzzle because one of them is blurred and the other one is has a bit more definition, so I can see that the fur goes round a little bit and I haven't quite got that. So going to the other side again, you go a bit darker than what I've got, and now you can see I'm adding a lot more linseed oil, but the paint already has water in it. A little bit more water. I don't want to go full on with the linseed just yet. So going into this side, he has got quite a dark patch here. Going down there, and under his nose it is very dark actually around the mouth. We'll put a little bit more depth of colour in here. and also work around the mouth a little bit more. So I use some of this colour that I haven't touched yet because it's got slightly more red. It's dark, but it's a bit more reddish. So a bit of linseed oil and a little bit of water. And I'm struggling with difficult photographs at the moment, so that's why I'm not 100% sure about what I'm doing. But what I always say is, if you're not sure, just keep going and something will happen. You might not like it, but there's going to be bits you do like, so it's worthwhile just persevering. Just keep cracking on. So there's a lot of hair around here that I'm not putting in yet because I'm still working on the feel of it. Also around his eye there's a very dark area, so where I made a black, I'm going to add more water and some linseed oil. I'm going to put in a line that I can see on one of the photographs. That's good. Oops, wrong colour. And also along here. So I'm going to paint an eye. I'm going to take my little graduate brush and make sure it's nice and clean. And there's a little hint of a sort of a reflected purple in the eye. I was going to go with using blue, but I actually think the purple will go lovely with the rusty orange and the green. So I'm going to use a purpley colour instead of the blue. So taking my ultramarine and my red and a bit of white. It's come out quite blue actually. I'm going to take a little bit of linseed. A bit more red. I'm going to put some Naples yellow in just to see what it looks like. That's quite nice actually, and it lightens it but not so severely as with the white, so I'm going to put a bit more red in it. And looking at the eye, I think that goes around here a little bit, so I'm just lightening the eyes a little bit because I've done them very dark. I need a much smaller brush actually to put in the highlights a bit. So his eyes are actually brown. I'm going to go with the brown and I'm going to add a little bit of white into it. I'm not keen on that brown actually, I'm going to put some red in. And I'm going to, that's not quite chestnutty enough. A bit more linseed. And see brown just around here and there. So that's giving him a little bit more life in his eyes. And I can see shadows in his eyes of, it looks like a bill, oh it's a head, it's the owner's head I can see in his eyes, reflected. That's rather nice. So I'm putting in the owner's head there. And there's a few strange dark shapes in this one, but there is quite a light area, so I'm going to take the white, put it next to the purple and take a little bit of purple, so very subtle. I'm going to go for pure white because that will come in a little shine at the end. And there's quite a lot of light going on in this eye, so it goes up here, down there, and for this eye there's a big shape there and another little one next to it. I think I've overdone that, it's a bit too big. Also, it's a bit loud, so I'll take it down a bit. And around that it's an awful lot darker, so I'll go back into my black colour here and just put in the shapes I can see. Like that. So basically with eyes you're looking at your mid-tone, your dark tone and your light tone, and also all the little shapes you can see. I've just gone and put my finger on the background, so I'm going to wipe that off. So I'm going to reshape the eye a little bit. And at the bottom of the eye I can see a little bit of purple. There is a lot of purple in these, but then I think that might be just the camera rather than the dog's eyes. Side again, there is a shadow line. That's a bit too dark again. And also the whites of the eyes aren't quite as white as I've got them, so I'm going to tone those down. They do look a bit pink in the photo. Take those down a bit. That's a bit better. I'm going to start on Yasmin now, and I'm going to be doing a lot more detail on her head. I'm going to be adjusting my darks and lights, putting in darker areas and going over with the lighter fur. So I'm looking at two photographs at the moment. One is of the fur collar and the other one is Yasmin in this pose. And hopefully between the two of them I should get there. So to start off with, I've mixed the same colours as I mixed when I was doing Archie. And I'm just going to use my Daleroni round brush. I really like this because I can put it on and then drag it and I get the edges of the fur, the ends of the fur quite finely. So I'm going to start around the eye, and I've already put darker area in. So I'm just going to go over that so it's slightly wettened. The reason I've done that is because it's still, it's dried from yesterday. So I'm going to put in a little bit of fur. Like that, just a suggestion. And usually over the eyebrows you've got this pale fur, and there's a light hitting here, so I'm just going in a little bit there with that, and I'm looking at the way the fur moves over the forehead. I'm going to put in the darker areas into here. This is actually quite a light tuft of hair that goes over her other eye that you can't see, so I'll lighten that as I go. And I'm going to put in a cooler colour in here. Like that. And I'll go over the top of that with the lighter colour that I've got. Pulling this colour over the top. What's a good tip is to put on quite thick colour, and then you can drag it round and pull one colour into another. It's pale over here. It's probably too pale. Go over that. Oops. And blocking in this area here a little bit. The hair goes in a different direction just between the eyes. And then on the nose, it's quite light. There is actually a nice little bit of hair that pops across there. Let's get that in. think I'll make that a little bit more red, that lighter area. That's too dark. And the hairs go up from there, like that. So moving on to her nose. Right, so the problem I have with this little area is that the tonal value is the same as the background, so I'll probably put in a little bit of dark into there. Either that, or I will be repainting the background. I might go lighter behind here as well, so I'm going to put a little bit of this pink into here. I think the angle might be wrong on that, so I'll probably paint over that to redraw it. So it's very light over the nose here. And also going down here. Just going to put in an area of light there. And I notice that there is a darker area here, so I'm going to go in there with a bit more with the dark, and then put the hair over it, going down here and filling in a few more areas here. So then I can start going over the top of it with the paler fur. So over here it goes down like that, and all the time following the line of the fur with my brush strokes. I'm looking at the bit on the side of the nose here, and it's quite gingery, so I'm going to cover the marks I've made, but it does however go dark just at the end, so I'll add that on. Oops, a little bit of fluff there. That needs to be a little bit more runny. And I can just see the roots of the hair there. She's got a dark patch where her nose is, and that's cooler, so I'll just put that in.